Welcome in to Greenville Grit. This is Greenville Residents in Touch with your hosts, Terry Williams and Michael Overton. This is the show that keeps you connected and in touch with the issues that affect what's happening in your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Greenville Toyota, the Overton Group, and Bill Clark Homes. Now, here are your hosts for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams and Michael Overton.
Good evening and welcome to Greenville Grit. I'm Terry Williams.
And I am Michael Overton, and we have a great guest tonight, Jim Blunt.
Do.
Jim, welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you.
Got a lot of discussion on what you've got going in the University Neighborhood Association and just in general, really, what's going on around the University District and town.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We are going to take a quick commercial break, but before we do that, we got to thank our sponsors.
That's right.
Greenville Toyota. Thank you, Craig Ghost and the Greenville Toyota team for sponsoring this show. Since its inception, if you're looking for a new Toyota or new Scion vehicle or a new used car, call Craig Ghost and the Greenville Toyota team and the Overton Group.
Thank you,
Real
Michael.
estate and property management professionals.
Continued support.
Yep. We got an office in Greenville and in New Bern, do property management, commercial brokerage, business brokerage, and residential brokerage. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, come back in 2 minutes, and we're going to get in discussion with Jim about all that's going on in the UNA.
Attention, Greenville.
Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. I am Michael Overton along with my co-host Terry Williams, and on today's show we have Jim Blunt. Jim, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now you are, get this right, president of the University Neighborhood Association.
That's correct.
You guys have been really involved and had about a lot of things going on in the last several months. Tell people listening, what is the UNA?
Well, the UNA, the University Neighborhood Association, is a group of the real estate owners, investors that own properties in the university area. And the organization is comprised of about 250 houses, about 300 apartments, and about 50 duplexes, which is a significant amount of properties that makes up the university neighborhood area. Mm-hmm. And we really strive hard to improve our properties and pay attention to the needs of the residents, the students who are occupying these properties in the university area.
Now, how long has this group been around?
This is our third year.
Okay.
Since we've been around, and this was formed about 3 years ago by some really engaged landlords over there that felt the need to really organize the group who really pay attention to their properties in that area.
Well, what have you seen? I know you've got, I guess, first of all, how long have you had properties in that area or been involved in that area?
I've had properties in that area, Michael, for 12 years now. And in the last 2 years, 3 years, well, especially more the last 18 months, I've seen a significant amount of improvements, revitalization. You know, obviously, since all the attention with the overlay and foreign related has been placed on that area, so I've seen a significant amount of improvement in the last 2 years.
Yeah, let's update the public about what happened since the election in November to the last month's city council meeting. Kind of fill everybody in about the voting and so forth with the city council and suggestions made by Dr. Crossgree to continue maybe even a citywide foreign related. Tell us about what happened to that and where we are with that right now.
Sure, Terry. Well, what happened? Obviously, there was a vote to do away with foreign related and the overlay. The foreign related vote was passed, but the overlay was not passed because they needed a supermajority for that. So the overlay district is still in place now. The permits that are in that overlay were grandfathered in, so those permits are safe. So all those individuals who did file for permits and were approved by the city are protected when grandfathered in. There was a lot of conversation probably in the last month and a half, 2 months, where Rick Crossgree was thinking about taking this conversation citywide as far as foreign related in other parts of the city.
Right.
And I think based upon the public's input and actually some of the council members' input, I think everybody's worn out with it.
Right.
I think that there was not enough support to even get the conversation started. So right now everything's just at a standstill.
Right.
And I think that there's other things on the council's agenda that needs to be taken care of, like the budget and other items.
Exactly.
How many homes were approved for this? And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about just the foreign related, but how many homes were approved for that?
We have, there's probably 70, I think around 70, 80 homes that were approved for that. It wasn't a significant amount of homes.
Well, there aren't but so many homes that can accommodate it,
Exactly.
which was part of the argument in the very beginning, why there was so much fuss about it when it wasn't going to change but so much anyway.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of the discussion we want to have too is related to property values and crime. I mean, one of the arguments against formulated when it was first put in place is we're going to have a crime problem, where the opposite seems to have taken place. Do you know off the top of your head any statistics for that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a member in our organization who actually runs bear analytics for all these areas, wrapped around the university neighborhood, and we can see that crime has significantly gone down in all parts of the neighborhood except for one area, and we're paying close attention to that area. I do think that you have to give credit to Chief Aiden and his team.
Right.
They have done an extraordinary job of implementing their CEPTED project, which is crime prevention through environmental design, which a lot of apartment owners and duplexes use. Also, just patrolling, engagement with the landlords. That includes UNA and Truna and anybody that lives there. And but I do think that you have to look at the broken window theory. I mean, with the investment that's going back in that area right now, there's a lot of people using the extra money from that fourth person to really fix their properties up. And we feel that they're, unlike some others feel that they're at odds about how we should get there, I feel like the properties need to be improved significantly before they'll revert back to residential. So
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. So I feel that we'll reach that tipping point when all the properties are really performing well.
Exactly. Let's go back to the, I was at your meeting last week, and the policemen that attended that are part of that unit you're speaking about. Is that also the Center City unit? Is that part of that, or is that something separate?
It is part of the Center City unit, and I may be misspeaking, but I'm pretty sure it is. Officer Kurtz is really the individual that we work with, and his job is to handle the CEPTED inspections.
Right.
And also really be engaged with the landlords. In fact, I met with him this morning about an undercover operation that they're working on right now, and the engagement they have done with the landlords is really phenomenal.
Now, those inspections are not what we're talking about when we talk about code enforcement. Those are safety inspections,
Correct.
like lighting or your bushes being too high,
Exactly.
or not being able to see through fences so they can check the yards and that sort of thing, which is completely different from the unit they have for code enforcement, just this for public knowledge, but so they wouldn't get the two confused. Did they patrol the neighborhood too? I can't remember if they said that or they only answer the calls. I mean, are
Yeah,
they
they
like
do
on
patrol.
the ground? Are they on bicycles or?
Yeah, they're patrolling. I mean, in fact, I ran on the Greenway last night, and I saw patrol cars there parked in certain areas, which they do frequently now. And I did see some guys on bicycles last night too. So they're on the Greenway,
Right.
And so they are patrolling heavily. There's one area in the university area that we want to focus on that's got some crime there and that we're working on right now. And I think that they told me they felt like that. Overall, they feel really good about the direction crime's going in, which is down.
That's right. And another, I was impressed with the engagement that the student body president from ECU, and I don't remember the position that the girl held, but they were
Chief of Staff.
Chief of
Yep.
Staff. That's right. They were there too, and they're really wanting to implement some programs to help that whole entire area because they like living close to the university in that neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that we have to have engagement from the student body, and Michael King is the president. Incoming.
right.
He's president now, and he's going to stay engaged. Now, he won't be at every meeting we have, but he'll have a liaison that comes to our meetings,
Right.
so we can stay engaged with them.
What percentage of the homeowners or landlords are in the UNA or involved in this?
The percentage, excuse me, the percentage of landlords, I would say in that area, you're talking about, and Terry, I may be wrong, about 1,250 homes.
That's
In
about
that
right.
area. So we're looking at about 250 houses. So you're talking about 35 to 40%, with apartments, duplexes, and residential houses.
How do you continue to be, because it seems what your group is doing has been great for the area, and those that aren't involved are going to receive the benefit of it. But what do you do in the case, and this I think is really outside of code enforcement too, but the homeowners or the landlords that don't care in certain pockets, aren't doing anything to fix their houses up? What is your initiative to try to to resolve that and get them involved, or
Sure.
get them to sell their properties to someone who will be involved?
Sure. Well, that's a tough sell, and we're going through that right now because if you ride through the neighborhood, and I will say that we'll talk about this initiative a little later in the show, but
Right.
if you ride through the neighborhood now and you see what's being fixed up in the neighborhood, these properties really do stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, the ones that aren't being
Right.
fixed up, the out of town landowners, it really does.
Yeah,
you can tell, and I think that that old saying, "All boats rise with the tide," is what's going
Right.
to happen.
Well, one of the results has been crime. They said it was going to go up. It's gone down. I think there was also some discussion of how the foreign related would really not have any effect on property value. And if you read the paper 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and the chancellor's house had 3 houses sold adjacent to it, and what was the value of that? It's
That was,
unbelievable.
well, it was 4 houses and 1.2 million.
Yeah, I'll tell
Four,
you
four
guys.
properties. Yeah, well, one owner had 3 out of 4, and yeah, that was. Well, I mean, it was great news for. I think it was great news for Greenville. It was great news for the property owners over there because we've been really hurting the last 4 or 5 years. In comps and
Right.
appraisals and pricings, and that right there just really showed that neighborhood is vibrant and it's coming back, and it's a great place to live and own a property in.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your new project?
Oh, yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah, it's a great project. Bob Dietrich, who's a local physician here, who's actually been a property owner in the university neighborhood much longer than I have. And Bob is very well known throughout the community of being a very engaged landlord. And he is really the brainchild behind this. What he wanted to do is create a program that really shows some measured outcomes on a street at a time. So we talked about this for months. We finally figured out a program called Project Curb Appeal. And what Project Curb Appeal does is we select an area in the university neighborhood, one street, not a block, but a street, one street at a time, and we go through that street and we do improvements, landscaping, light construction, pressure washing, painting, any kind of improvement from the curbside standpoint. And the beauty of this is we're using the local community service program, which is
Right.
with the Department of Corrections for students, high school, college, young adults who have gotten DUIs, DWIs, parking violations, even some minor marijuana offenses
Right.
to work their community service hours off. And we start that project up in June, and that's going to be a neat program. And someone from our organization will oversee when the students are actually working during the
Right.
week.
To make sure they turn in the right hours
Turn the
and
right
all
hours.
that sort of thing.
Don't get lazy.
Exactly. Well, and I think there was some conversation in the beginning. People were so afraid, you're going to do community service hours. What type of people are going to be up and down our streets? So you've definitely answered that. And I think it's a very good thing. It's sort of like staying after school and washing the blackboards in front of your friends.
Exactly.
Maybe this will deter them from committing those offenses again.
Absolutely.
You
not
know,
getting caught.
or not getting caught. Maybe that's right. So you're doing it street by street, and this is hopefully to make what you're doing sort of even for everyone that
Sure.
that owns property. So you may. I mean, some houses might not need some of the things you're doing because it is maybe a homeowner and they've taken good care, or
Oh,
one
sure.
of them's your home, you're a landlord and you've taken good care. So I guess you'll just spot those and just work along the street.
Sure. There's houses even, and this is public. We're going to start at between 5th and 4th on Student.
Okay.
And we're going to, wrap around that street. And there's a couple of houses on that street that are just in great shape.
Right.
Homeowners own them. They've been there for years. But then there's some properties there that are rental properties that, look a little worn,
Right.
need to be painted, need to be landscaped. And I think that first street is a great place to start. It's high impact area and it's close to the chancellor's house.
Right.
And, maybe the university executives can see some improvement along there. And then we'll go toward the back of the neighborhood, back towards 2nd and Summit. And there's a couple of streets back there that it really needs some help, and we'll start back there, and then we'll go from there and just hit other areas.
So when you're going up and down the streets and you see other violations that don't really are maybe a code enforcement item instead, will you be able to turn those in? And that because that's, I mean, I don't know what it might be, but broken windows or things
Sure.
like that, that you're not really going to be doing that sort of thing. So then you all can also help maybe call code enforcement and tell them we've got some other issues.
Oh yeah, we when we launched the program, as you saw at the in the event the other night, GPD was there. Code enforcement could not be there tonight for a certain reason. I saw him the next day.
Right.
But we work. I mean, I see those guys on a daily basis, and we all have to be in good working relationships
Right.
with them, and they're there to help us. We're there to help them. Sometimes they tell you things you don't want to hear.
Right.
But that's kind of like this program. There's things that you see on these properties that other landowners can't see. And that's why we're there to help implement this.
Exactly right. I tell you what, I'm a little disappointed. I called code enforcement last week and turned in a yard on a street near my office, and I've not heard a word, not a call back. So you out there in code enforcement need to call me back. I have to ride by this grassy 15-inch high grass yard every day, and
It might be one of Jim's. Want to be careful.
I
with
don't
that.
think so. I don't
hope
think
not.
so. But I know they're doing the best they can. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt with the holiday weekend.
Jim, what would you like to see happen in this area? I mean, what long term, 5 to 10 years from now? I know one of the things that some of the council members would like to see is more home ownership. But what would you like to see as an investor in that community? Someone who has been in it since really when it was at the bottom.
Absolutely.
To enjoying the
right.
ride up. I mean,
Sure.
you're gonna hopefully enjoy the fruits of your labor, but you took a big risk in investing in this to begin with.
Absolutely.
What would you like to see in 10 years from now?
That's a great question. I would like to see continued crime go down, and also some amenities added to the area. I think that if I talk to the students as they come in and their parents, we're looking at what do they want? They want a safe, clean neighborhood for their kids.
Right.
And also, you want stuff for them to do. You want. I'd love to see some kind of not a marina, but at least start with some kind of docking system where kids can launch these kayaks and paddle boards and stuff down at the town commons.
Right.
Sand volleyball court and some green space, maybe an extended dog park. Stuff for the students to do, more stuff for them to do as
Right.
this neighborhood continues to clean up.
What challenge would you see, though, in being in the position you're in of getting ownership levels up? I mean, I know we all know that this has been primarily a university student area since I was born, probably
Sure.
since you were
Absolutely.
born. We're both from Greenville,
Yep.
and so I know one of the goals will be to have more home ownership in that area, but what do you think the challenge or obstacle of seeing that happen is?
Well, I think the challenge is what we're seeing right now, and I think we're getting there. I think crime going down. I think the neighborhood getting more exposure. I think that the properties that are being fixed up will revert back to residential eventually. I mean, that tipping point will happen. I mean, we've got a long ways to go, but I think that you have to create some really nice homes over there. When
Right.
someone gets out of college and wants to move to that neighborhood and they want to put all this money into the house, they really don't have the money to do that.
Right.
And this channel we're using right now with the fourth person has provided that channel.
I agree with that for sure. There were some other. I was in Washington over the weekend and rode through a neighborhood, and they've taken like a very small corner lot and put a wrought iron fence around it with the right flooring, that you'd use for a park, and it just had like a single slide. It wasn't a big park, but it was like a little. I call them like a little pocket park, and maybe some things not necessarily with slides for those kids, but even for people who you're trying to get families back in the neighborhood. If they had some little hangout park areas like that, that might even work in that neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Where I know now land is valuable because there's the lots are smaller. There may not be some spaces, but there's an older park. Is it Woodlawn?
It is I think it's on
Maybe-
Park Avenue.
Okay, that maybe that could have some attention paid to it, and
It needs it
Well, I
too.
think that
and-
goes back to the whole budget.
but it could be done by volunteers, by
Sure.
community service,
And we've
by
talked about that
something
too.
like that.
It's a public-private partnership.
Well, I think it
Exactly.
goes back to our whole budget with the city of not having that money set aside in the past to take care of the big repair
exactly.
jobs, such as roofs, such as major
Exactly.
upfits to parks, and I think the maintenance dollars have been there, but we haven't been able to keep up with it. So
I have one question about the Project Curb Appeal real quick, and then I think we have to take another break. But so by doing this street by street, how long do you think, or what is your projection of getting everything in the way that you want it to look, all streets covered?
Well, that one, I mean, we talked about this the other night. I think that this project can come in place and stay in place.
Right.
And I think it needs to stay in place. And I think you work with the community service program with the corrections department.
Right.
And we keep it in place. And I think we can integrate this in with SEPTED, with the GPD. And it can really be a model for how you keep the neighborhood clean.
Right.
And, have a standard for these houses. And I think we'd like to get to that where, you have like a gold standard, silver, bronze,
Right.
where you can have these
Well,
levels.
this definitely involves volunteers, but
Yes.
you got to have that. But I think that it is an excellent opportunity for a pilot program to see how this might work in other neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
But they're going to have to volunteer or form some sort of, maybe the neighborhood association that they've already got set up, can step up and do that.
Sure.
But it will require people stepping up like you. And in some neighborhoods, they will be homeowners more than landlords, because some of our neighborhoods don't have that, but they still can use this same type of program in their own neighborhoods.
Sure.
Certainly a possibility.
Well, we are going to go to our
Great.
second commercial break. We're going to come back and wrap up the show again with Jim Blunt finishing up with us, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. This is Michael. Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. I'm Michael Overton, along with Terry Williams and Jim Blunt, president of the University Neighborhood Association. So I know we have spent so much time since the election and even during the election talking about this area. And I know there's a lot going on in here. And thank you for your efforts and what the UNA is doing. I would definitely encourage trying to get more homeowners involved, because it is obvious that your efforts have done a lot. But there's multiple groups, there's multiple names going on down there. A lot of people hear about Truna. Who is Truna, and what role do they play with what you guys are doing?
Well, Truna's been around since the early 80s, and Truna is the Tar River University Neighborhood Association, and that's a group of the residents that live in the area.
Okay.
They're really not rental property owners. I mean, our organization was formed to organize the people who own rental properties in that area.
Now, your organization, at the beginning of it, I don't know if that's changed. Anybody really that
Anybody
had an
can
interest
join.
in the
Absolutely.
area could join your group and volunteer and help whatever they wanted to do, just because they had an interest in it.
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
it's a 501c3. We have a membership drive
Right.
every year, and people are welcome to join. The Tar River University Neighborhood Association has been around for a long time, and there's some really good people in that organization. Their idea of how we get to that tipping point where things revert back to residential and our idea of how things get there are just totally different.
Right.
And I think that's where things go off in the same direction. I've had several meetings with Andrew Moorhead,
Right.
the president, and Andrew and I get along well, and but we just differ
Right.
on how we get to that area.
Exactly.
I know one of the things Councilwoman Blackburn has been pushing for years is the rental registry.
Yes. We've talked about the rental registry a lot, and
Can you give us your thoughts on this? And is there a need for this?
well, I think I don't think that the rental registry is needed, because I feel that with code enforcement doing their job, that's what the city pays them to do. These people are trained to do this work. They're paid. That department is really organized under the GPD now, if I'm correct. And so they've got a really neat program in place, and I think we need to let them do their job.
Right.
I think that putting more tax on the property owner is not the way to go, right? Especially when we're in recovery mode right now. I mean,
Right.
people think everybody's getting rich on these properties. The margins are thin at the end of the month once you've paid all your health, all your insurance and your health.
One
and-
vacant bedroom can be profit versus loss.
Exactly. You
And
hit it
people
right
don't
on the
realize
nail.
how close it is.
Well,
hit it
I
right
think
on.
Trina should be very excited that you all are going to, want to do everything you can do to help the property values, because that's going to benefit them.
Oh, absolutely.
No matter who lives in the house. If
Well,
they
they
can
should
get,
be really
they
excited
should
about
be
what has happened next
excited.
to the chancellor's house.
Exactly. I'm sure they are.
Their property values just doubled.
I'm sure they are.
So-
Well, we may have an exit. Maybe have an exodus of the Trina folks after the property values just came out.
Well,
So
I know. You never know. So
they may decide to start selling, but I think that they have it. They're organized. They're very well organized. They're very passionate about their mission.
They do care about. They
do,
care about
and
the
I have a lot of
neighborhood and the
respect for
area.
that.
I do too. So that is a good thing.
Well, taxes. We really haven't discussed it, but we got a lot of discussion next month.
Yeah,
We've got
the
a
whole
bond.
month will
We've
be
got a bond
dedicated to
referendum
the budget
discussion
and the
going
bond.
on. I hope that it sounds like they're all on board to waiting until the fall of 2015 to try to push this bond through. But there's discussion, and as a property owner, of course, I'm a property owner here in town. You're a property owner. You've
Right.
got several properties here in
Yeah.
town. 1 cent tax increase is in the budget for June.
Yeah.
We've got roads. Pew's Tire is loving it with the current condition of Greenville City roads. They get to put new shocks and tires on cars often because the roads are so bad. And it's like we set money aside, we don't spend the money, and then we say we don't have the money, so we need to raise your taxes, even though we allotted the money
Right.
a year and a half ago. So a little frustrating there. I mean, you kind of need to get with your council members and say, spend the money. It's there to
Right.
start working on these roads
Sure.
before we approve an additional tax increase that is supposedly going to cover roads and other deferred maintenance. Jim, I mean, I know you've got to have an opinion on this and what's going on with the discussion of the budget and tax increases and bond referendums. Give us your thoughts as an investor and property owner and resident in Greenville.
Well, I've been paying close attention to it, and I think that I do think they should delay the bond referendum till year after next. I think it's
2015.
2015 is too fast. I mean, I think we do need to initiate a bond. I don't think you should initiate a bond and raise taxes. That gets a little cloudy.
But now the problem is they're going to be spread out a year, so people might forget.
That's true.
that we just did a tax increase this year, and they're talking about what, a 3 cent increase
Four.
on the bond?
4 cents.
4 cents. So
4
you're talking
cents
about
for
a
the
nickel,
bond.
a nickel increase every year. That's steep.
Yeah,
You
it
know, you
is.
can argue that it goes back to what it was several years ago, but in a course of a year span, that's pretty steep.
Yeah, that is, and it seems to hit the real estate people harder than anybody too, because it always goes against the
It
land.
taxes the same people over and over and
over
over.
and over again. And people, you have landfill taxes, you have city and sewer water tax. I mean, it's one thing after another.
So for a while in the past, they had added a 1 cent sales tax. They got that approved by legislature that actually was spread over more of our population, and people traveling, in our city would be paying a little more. Why couldn't something like that be done again instead of a property tax?
Sure. That's a good question.
don't know.
I think that I think there is a panel, supposedly a 14-person panel that's going to be named by
Right.
each council person, and they're going to discuss this over a period of time. And I think that's one of the ideas that needs to be discussed. I really think that Greenville's lost their focus on the economic development piece,
Exactly.
and I
There's
think
a
that
little doubt about that.
No
I think
doubt
that
about
needs
it.
to be brought into this
Right.
whole discussion too. And we've really gotten off track with that in the last 6 or 8 months. I
so,
hate to
too.
see that, but that's the way that the current leadership's moving.
Well, and that's unfortunate because economic development brings the jobs, which brings the growth that we're all looking for. So, Jim, I want to thank you one more time just for coming on and
Thank
for
you.
being a
It's
part
been
of
great.
this.
Thank you,
Appreciate your
Michael. Thank you,
information.
Terry.
Enjoy having you as a friend and a colleague here in Greenville. We are going to be back next Wednesday, also Friday night and Saturday morning. Thank you again for Greenville Toyota and Everton Group, and we'll see you next week.